Okay, so this is a sagittal section, sagittal view of the male reproductive tract. This is the pubis right there. Here's the sacrum, so we're in the pelvic cavity here. And let me just go ahead and read some of this here. So in males, the primary sex organs or gonads are the testes. Testes are responsible for producing sperm via a process called spermatogenesis, and we'll talk about spermatogenesis. The testes are also responsible for producing sex steroids, in particular testosterone, which is going to drive this spermatogenesis process. Testosterone is responsible or necessary for the production of sperm. So after sperm are produced in the testes, they're stored, they're moved, and then they're stored in this structure right here called the epididymis. And specifically, sperm are stored down here at the tail of the epididymis. And sperm are going to be stored there until ejaculation. And this is triggered by the sympathetic nervous system. So, and we'll talk about ejaculation a little bit, but what happens at that point is that sperm move from the tail of the epididymis through the male reproductive tract. The first place they move after the epididymis is through this long tube right here called the, you know what it is, I'm looking for the thing here, called the vas deferens. So this big long tube is called the vas deferens. And then what happens, let's see, that's the vas deferens, and then sperm move into what we call this ejaculatory duct right there. But then at that point, the ejaculatory duct merges with this tube right here, which is the urethra, right? Here's the urinary bladder. Coming out of the urinary bladder is the urethra. And I mentioned that in males, the urethra has a dual role. One, it transports urine, but it also transports sperm. Okay. And also what happens is that when sperm moves down through this reproductive tract, you also have accessory sex glands that are secreting products into it. These are called the seminal vesicles. The seminal glands are the seminal vesicles. These are called the bulbourethral glands. That guy right there is the prostate gland. So what happens is this sperm travels down through the travels down into the urethra. Once it gets into the urethra, these glands secrete products in there along with the sperm. And those products, which along with sperm are collectively called semen, are going to be expelled from the penis. And those products are there to help the sperm with its journey through the female reproductive tract. And we'll talk about that again. Let's see, what are some other things here? Here's the scrotum that contains the testes. The opening where urine, and in this case sperm, leaves the reproductive tract is called the external urethral orifice. This part of the urethra up there is called the prostatic urethra because it's running through the prostate gland. This part of the urethra right there is called the spongy urethra because it's running through this spongy tissue in the penis, which is going to be responsible for an erection. All right, let's go through some more stuff here. So the testes are located outside the body in a pouch of skin called the scrotum. There's the scrotum. There's the scrotum there. So, it's kind of curious. In females, the ovaries, the gonads, are located within the pelvic cavity there. Why is it that the male gonads, the testes, are located outside the pelvic cavity? Well, it has to do with the production of sperm. Homeostatic body temperature, normal body temperature in humans is 37 degrees Celsius, but optimal production of sperm occurs at 34 degrees Celsius, so below body temperature. So to achieve this lower body temperature, the testes have to be located outside the body. This cooler location, they require a cooler location to most efficiently do their job. But here's a question for you guys. What happens when it's cold outside, when it's below 34 degrees Celsius? Okay, let's say it's 26 degrees Celsius out there. That's too cold for sperm production. What's going to happen? Well, it involves muscles in the scrotum. In particular, it involves the cremaster muscle, which is right here, that comes down and wraps around the testes, and this is skeletal muscle. And it also includes the dartos muscle, which is within the scrotum itself. So what happens? What happens when the temperature's below 34 degrees Celsius? What do these skeletal muscles do, or these muscles do? Skeletal and smooth. Well, they contract and bring the testes up closer into the body. So here's a testicle in its optimal environment here. It's just chilling out. All right, this is 34 degrees Celsius right there, happily producing sperm. And what it's showing here is that in a relaxed state, these muscles that we talked about elongate, and they allow the testicle to hang away from the body. These blood vessels are nice and stretched out, so this testicle is just chilling out here, producing sperm. But what happens when it's cold outside? And actually the same thing happens if it's cold outside or if the testicle is threatened. Yes, if the testicle is threatened. You know, this is how males produce their offspring, and so, you know, there's a lot riding in that. And so if those testicles feel threatened, this same response occurs, and that's what this is showing here. But when the testicle is cold or threatened, the cremaster muscle contracts. The cremaster muscle around the testes contracts, and what that does is it draws the testes closer to the body, closer to that warmer environment. Additionally, the dartos muscle contracts, and that increases the thickness of the scrotum, okay, which reduces heat loss as well. We can talk about that in class if you want. All right, so here's our guy right here. This is a sperm, and there's a few different components of the sperm. One is the head. This is the head of the sperm right there. And what do you see in the head of the sperm? What's this purple stained thing right there? That's the nucleus. Okay, that's the suitcase. That's where the business is at. Okay, 23 chromosomes located in that nucleus. That's the package we're trying to deliver to the female reproductive tract. Another thing that's located on top of the head is something called an acrosome. It's basically like a cap on top of the head. And this contains enzymes. In particular, it contains enzymes that are going to be able to penetrate the egg should the sperm reach the egg. So we have the head, the acrosome, we have the midpiece right here, and then we have the tail. Now, what's the tail going to do? Tail's going to do what it does. Okay, it's going to twirl, and it's going to allow the sperm to propel itself. It's going to allow for propulsion of the sperm. Okay, then we have the midpiece region here. And something about the midpiece region is there's a whole bunch of mitochondria in there. Why would we find a whole bunch of mitochondria in the midpiece? What do mitochondria do? They produce ATP. And why does this sperm need to produce ATP? To power this tail that's going to propel the sperm. Okay, so here's a sagittal view, sagittal section, sagittal view of the testes. And if you see inside the testes here, what the testes are made up of, essentially, are a bunch of tubes. Tubes, tubes, tubes. Okay? And these are called the seminiferous tubules. And these seminiferous tubules are continuous with these other tubes, in particular the rete testes, which are continuous. This is the epididymis there. Okay. This is the epididymis. And all of these are tubes of the epididymis. And these tubes of the epididymis give way to the vas deferens there. So there's a whole bunch of tubage going on in there, and it's all connected, and it all starts with the seminiferous tubules within the testes. This is where sperm production is going to occur. What we're looking at here is a cross-section of one of these seminiferous tubules. This is a seminiferous tubule. This all right here is the wall of the seminiferous tubule, and then this is the lumen of the seminiferous tubule. And what's going to happen here is that sperm are produced in the walls of the seminiferous tubules. This is called spermatogenesis. So spermatogenesis occurs in the walls of the tubules. And basically what happens, and we'll go over this a little bit later, is you have these stem cells and they differentiate, and as they move down closer to the lumen, they become more and more sperm-like until by the time they reach the actual lumen, you have these cells that actually look like sperm. They're called spermatozoa at this point. So you start with these cells right here, these stem cells, and you end up with what look like fully functional sperm. And those sperm are released into the lumen of the seminiferous tubule. So this is happening constantly. Sperm are being produced, they move down like so, and as they move down, they mature, they gain shape, and by the time they reach the lumen, you have what look like these fully functional sperm. And these sperm are released into the lumen. Once they're released into the lumen, then they travel down the seminiferous tubule, into the rete testi, into the epididymis, and then they travel down the epididymis, down to the tail of the epididymis, and this is where sperm are stored, in the tail of the epididymis. So these sperm that are constantly being produced by the testes, 1,000 per second, are moving down this tubular structure, and they're stored in the tail of the epididymis until ejaculation, until the sympathetic nervous system stimulates that, says, all right, here we go, and moves all of those sperm up there through the vas deferens out the body. 1,000 per sperm per second. Wow. And that's what this is showing here, what's telling you guys here. After sperm are produced in the seminiferous tubules, they travel through the epididymis, and they're stored at the tail of the epididymis. And I must say that as the sperm are traveling down here, you know, they're undergoing maturation. They're undergoing changes that allow them to become fully functional sperm. Now, this is a good time to bring up testicular self-examination here. And the reason I bring this up is because, well, what you do with a testicle exam that you give to yourself is that you're looking for lumps, for tumors on the testi. Okay, testicular cancer is relatively rare, but it is the most common cancer in American males between the ages of 15 and 35. Okay, it's highly treatable, but you just have to detect it. So you're looking for these lumps, and the reason I bring this up now is because this epididymis is a discrete structure on the back of the testi, and you don't want to get the epididymis confused for a potential lump or a potential tumor. All right, so we're still talking about getting those sperm out of the body now. We talked about how they're produced. Well, now it's time to get them out of the body. And for males, copulation, which is sexual intercourse, and the opportunity for fertilization requires two things to happen. Okay, so we have sperm that are stored in the epididymis. The question now is, how do we get them out of the male body and into the female reproductive tract? Because that's the goal, right, of the reproductive system is fertilization. So for males, copulation, which refers to sexual intercourse, and the opportunity for fertilization requires two things. One, it requires an erection. And two, it requires ejaculation. So both of these things need to occur for sperm to move into the female reproductive tract. And both of these are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So we'll start with an erection here. So what an erection is it's an enlargement and stiffening of the penis. The penis is the male copulatory organ. So it's an enlargement and stiffening of the penis. So how does this happen? Well, most of the penis is made up of three long cylindrical bodies of what we call spongy erectile tissue. Boom, boom, boom. Okay? And we have three of them. Two of these are called the corpora cavernosa. These right there are the corpora cavernosa. And then we have the corpus spongiosum. And the corpus spongiosum surrounds the urethra right there. This is a better picture right here. Here you can see the corpora cavernosa, and then here's the corpora spongiosum. And then on this picture, here's the cavernosa, and then here's the spongiosum, which is right around the urethra. Okay, so how does this happen? Well, sexual excitement triggers a parasympathetic reflex. So an erection is controlled by the parasympathetic system. And what it does is it relaxes smooth muscle in the blood vessel walls within the corpora cavernosa. So here we have the corpora cavernosa. When the parasympathetic system is activated, it relaxes smooth muscle in these blood vessel walls. That causes vasodilation. And what happens to blood flow when blood vessels vasodilate? It goes up. And so more blood goes through this spongy tissue, and that causes the erectile bodies to fill with blood and causes an erection. And this primarily happens up here in the cavernosa. Okay, the spongiosum down here, it does expand, but not nearly as much because, we don't want to pinch off that urethra because the sperm have to travel through there. So most of the erection is due to the blood filling up these corpora cavernosa here. Yeah, and then this shows the those bodies there. Let's see, something else. This is called the glans penis right there. And that's the extended cap of the corpus spongiosum. Okay, it's this bulbous end at the tip of the penis. And then there is foreskin that goes over the glans penis, but with circumcision in circumcised individuals, this foreskin is removed. Right there. Okay, that's step one, in erection. What about step two? Ejaculation. This is the forceful propulsion of semen from the male reproductive tract. And this is it's under nervous system control, and specifically it's under the control of the sympathetic system. To highlight that. So this is the control of ejaculation right here, and this is all a nervous system thing. So we have sensory components, we have integrative components, and we have motor components. I'll get a new iPad that has the new Apple Pen, and this will be all, I'll be able to write this all nice and stuff. But right now I just have my smudgy pen. But that's okay. So how does this happen? How does ejaculation happen? Okay, that's ejaculation right there. Sperm and semen traveling out of the male reproductive tract. Well, what happens is it's a spinal reflex. And so the first thing that needs to happen is you need to have sensory information. So I'll just go ahead and read through this here. But ejaculation is controlled by a spinal reflex involving the spinal ejaculatory generator. That's this guy right there. And that occurs in the lumbar region of the spinal cord. So this is a spinal reflex occurring at the lumbar region of the spinal cord. And basically what's going to happen is sensory information that essentially causes sexual arousal, causes an erection. That sensory information travels to the spinal cord, and it activates this spinal ejaculatory generator. So when spinal impulses provoking an erection reach a critical level, so this sensory information has to reach a critical level. And when it does, this center becomes activated. So here we have sensory information coming in, and once that sensory information reaches a critical level, okay, then the ejaculatory center becomes activated. And what it does is it sends a massive wave of sympathetic impulses to the genital organs in response. And that's what's going on right there. So what it does is it causes the epididymis to contract. It causes the vas deferens to contract. And what that does is it moves sperm into the urethra. Okay? At the same time, what it's doing is it's triggering accessory sex glands like the prostate gland, bulbourethral gland, seminal vesicles. And what that's doing is it's moving their products into the urethra as well. And we'll talk about those steps. But collectively, this is called the emission step. So we move sperm from the epididymis into the vas deferens by the contraction of muscles in the smooth muscle wall there. And also the accessory sex glands are activated well. That's the emission step. The ejaculatory center also stimulates a rapid series of contractions in skeletal muscles. Okay, like the bulbospongiosis muscles of the penis. There's a better picture of it there. This is the bulbospongiosis muscle wrapped around the penis. And what that does is those also contract, and that helps expel semen out of the urethra. 11 miles per hour. Okay, so this is the expulsion step. So we have sensory information coming in, reaches a critical level, which activates the spinal ejaculatory center. Spinal ejaculatory center causes the epididymis and the vas deferens to contract, also activates the accessory sex glands. So we're moving sperm through the tract and putting secretions in it. And it also causes contractions of muscles around the penis. And those propel the semen out of the penis. Now this diagram here, which is highly detailed, was from a medical article that talked about sites for inhibiting ejaculation. So, inhibiting ejaculation. So, for instance, let's see what they have going on here. There are topical anesthetics, okay, that inhibit these penile sensory receptors. And so that decreases the sensory information going to the ejaculatory center. and prevents ejaculation. So that's one site. Botulinum toxin, it doesn't sound too good, but inhibits rhythmic contractions of those skeletal muscles around the penis. So that can inhibit ejaculation. SSRIs, what are those? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These are antidepressants. These have the side effect, SSRIs have a side effect of, I don't know how they act exactly, but they're acting up here on the brain, and that depresses the spinal ejaculatory center. And so that's also another means to inhibit ejaculation, are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So yeah, that emission step, the first thing that happens is we have contraction of the epididymis, which sends sperm into the vas deferens. That causes contraction of the vas deferens. We're moving sperm through here. Meanwhile, it also causes contraction of the sex glands, the seminal vesicles, the prostate, the bulbourethral gland, and that causes them to release their products into the urethra as well, and collectively that forms semen. Also, the skeletal muscles around the penis contract, and all of that together causes semen to leave the penis. Okay, so let's take a look at semen here. What is semen? Semen's a milky white, somewhat sticky mixture of sperm, accessory gland secretions, and testicular fluid. So there's some fluid in the testicle that's going to become part of the semen, but the majority of it are these accessory gland secretions. Okay? There is sperm in here, but sperm only make up about 1% of the total volume of semen. Most of it are these accessory gland secretions. So what do we want to have in these in semen? What do we want to be present in semen? So the way I like to think about this is here we have a sperm, and the goal of the sperm is to go up through the reproductive tract into the fallopian tube. So what does the sperm need on his journey to increase his chances of fertilization? Any idea? What can we put in this sperm to help in the semen to help this sperm out? Well, we'll go through these accessory glands and talk about them. Let's see. So the first ones I want to look at are what we call the seminal vesicles. And these are paired. There's one right there and one right there. And again, they secrete their products into the, I guess it's still the vas deferens at this point, during ejaculation as sperm is moving down the vas deferens. So these are going to secrete a yellowish, viscous, alkaline fluid. Alkaline, what does that mean? It means basic. Why do we want it to be basic? The answer is that the vagina is acidic. Okay, the vagina is acidic because it has to be protective. It's an open body cavity, and it needs to protect against bacteria and other stuff, and so it needs to be acidic to do that. So for the sperm to survive, it has to be able to neutralize that acidity, so it's alkaline. Some other stuff that this is going to contain: fructose. Why the heck would semen contain fructose? Well, it's a sugar. And the semen needs sugar to produce ATP. Those mitochondria in the midpiece need sugar to produce ATP. So that's why that fructose is there. About 65% of the total semen volume is derived from the seminal vesicles. Another thing that I want to point out is there's a yellow pigment from the seminal vesicles, And this pigment fluoresces under UV light. So if you're into, crime shows, all that kind of stuff, and they take a UV light in a bedroom and they're scanning around looking for looking for sperm or for semen. And that's because the seminal vesicles have a pigment in it that fluoresces under UV light. Okay, another accessory gland, sex gland, is the prostate gland. It's a single gland, donut-shaped, size of a peach pit, and it encircles the urethra just below the bladder. So during ejaculation, smooth muscle in the prostate is going to contract, and it's going to cause it to secrete its product into the urethra. And these secretions play an important role in activating the sperm, and this accounts for about 30% of semen volume. Now, the prostate is an important site for organ for males to keep track of, because after lung cancer, prostate cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among U.S. men. And so I don't know what the age is now. I think it's a little past 40, because I haven't been recommended to go get one yet. It used to be 40. But what you do is you go into the doctor and they stick their finger up your bum, and what they're doing is they're feeling the prostate, and they're feeling for tumors on the prostate. But some potential signs and symptoms, that you might have if you have prostate cancer is, blood in your urine, blood entering the urine there. And a lot of things just having to do with urination, waking frequently to pee, sudden or urgent need to pee, difficulty starting or stopping, slow flow, that kind of thing. Because you can imagine, because the tumor here is pinching against the urethra. So that can stop urine flow, then it may allow it through, all those types of things. Then lastly, we have the bulbourethral glands, also called the Cowper's glands. And I believe on exams, some former student told me that there was a question about the Cowper's glands on the TEAS test, and they named them as the Cowper's glands. But these are paired glands. They're pea-sized glands just below the prostate, and they produce a thick, clear mucus which drains into the spongy urethra, lubricates the urethra just prior to ejaculation. And this mucus also neutralizes the acidity of the urine as well. All right, so lastly I want to talk about spermatogenesis. And spermatogenesis, as the name implies, is the formation of sperm. Okay, it's the sequence of events in the seminiferous tubules, so we're going to be dealing with the seminiferous tubules down here in the testes that produce sperm. And this is going to be under endocrine control. This is something that's controlled by the endocrine system. Okay, so again, we're looking at the seminiferous tubules right here, and what we're looking at here is a cross-section of one of the seminiferous tubules. So if it was to continue, it'd continue like so, and that makes this here the lumen of the seminiferous tubules. Okay, it's a tube, right? So this is the actual lumen, and then this is the wall of the seminiferous tubule. And what I want to point out is that spermatogenesis occurs in the wall of the seminiferous tubule. We produce sperm in the wall of the seminiferous tubule, and then what we're going to do is we're going to release that sperm into the lumen. And then it's in the duct system, and it can do its thing and go down here and be stored at the tail of the epididymis. So this all begins with stem cells that we call spermatogonia. So this is a individual stem cell right there called a spermatogonium. So that's where we're going to start, and it results in the production of spermatozoa. So these are almost fully functional sperm here that we call spermatozoa. So spermatogenesis starts with the spermatogonium, and it ends with spermatozoa that we're releasing into the lumen. So spermatogenesis begins during puberty. For males, it begins during puberty. And what happens is that this spermatogonium undergoes mitosis, and it results in two genetically identical daughter cells. So here's our spermatogonium. It's going to undergo mitosis, which means it's going to divide, and it's going to result in two identical, what we call daughter cells. And we have a type A daughter cell, and we have a type B daughter cell. And these daughter cells are going to do different things. So let's start with actually the type B. What happens is the type B daughter cell is going to get pushed down toward the lumen. And as it gets pushed down toward the lumen, it starts to undergo meiosis. And meiosis, if you guys remember, is the process that has two different divisions in it, two different nuclear divisions. And we essentially start off with one cell, and we end up making 4 cells as a result. And just as importantly, we start off with one haploid cell. This type B cell is a diploid cell. We start off with the diploid cell 2N, and we end up with the haploid cell N. So we have 2N equals 46. That's what this type B daughter cell is, and we end up with N equals 23, a haploid number, and that's what we want for this sperm here. And so yeah, what happens is this type B daughter cell gets pushed down. It undergoes 2 separate divisions, and that results in 4 individual haploid cells as a result. So we start with one type B daughter cell, and it results in 4 haploid spermatozoa. And this is occurring through meiosis. You can see there's one division of meiosis, and there's another division of meiosis. So that's the type B daughter cell. Then this type A daughter cell stays up here along what they call this the basal lamina. This type A daughter cell stays up here near the basal lamina, and what it does is it undergoes its own division, and it produces another type A daughter cell, and it produces another type B daughter cell. And this type B daughter cell is going to go down, and it's going to produce more sperm. And so what the type A does is the type A cell maintains the stem cell line and allows for continual sperm production pretty much throughout life after puberty for males. So the type B cell is the one that's actually going to make sperm, and the type A cell is the one that maintains the stem cell line so we can continue to produce sperm throughout life. So let's look at the control of spermatogenesis. And like I mentioned earlier, spermatogenesis is under the control of the endocrine system. It's under the control of hormones. And the axis that we're going to be involved with here is the hypothalamic. There's the hypothalamus. Pituitary. There's the anterior pituitary that we're going to be dealing with. Testicular axis. So hypothalamic, pituitary, testicular axis. And specifically within the testes, we're acting within the seminiferous tubules here. Okay, so let's start this up. We start at the hypothalamus up here, and the hypothalamus releases a hormone called gonadotropin-releasing hormone, or GnRH. And I want to point out that the hormones that are involved in the male and female endocrine control of reproduction, or at least these endocrine axes here, are the same. Okay, so you know the male, and for the most part you know the female. So we're starting off by releasing GnRH from the hypothalamus. GnRH travels down to the anterior pituitary, and in response, the anterior pituitary releases two hormones: follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And again, these are the same two hormones that are found that are released by the anterior pituitary in females. So both males and females have these same hormones here. So GnRH released from the hypothalamus acts on the anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary releases FSH and LHH, which goes into the blood supply and now has access to all the cells in the body. So what's going to happen to these hormones? They're going to travel through the blood, and they're going to go down to the testes. And they're going to have their effects on the testes. And that's what this is showing here. This is the wall of the seminiferous tubule right here. Okay? And this is FSH having its effect on the seminiferous tubule, and this is LH having its effect on the seminiferous tubule. So let's look at LH first. LH comes down and it actually binds to these cells called interstitial cells. So this is the seminiferous tubule there, and on top of the seminiferous tubule, you have these what are called these interstitial cells. They're surrounding the seminiferous tubules. And when LH binds to these interstitial cells, it causes them to secrete testosterone. So now we have testosterone that's released into the blood. And the bottom line is that when we have rising levels of testosterone, when testosterone levels are at a certain level, that serves as the trigger for spermatogenesis. So testosterone is the hormone that's going to trigger spermatogenesis. And that's a very important point to know. At the same time, testosterone, and that's what this is showing here, enters the bloodstream, and it exerts a number of other effects at other body sites. It stimulates the maturation of sex organs, the development and maintenance of secondary sex characteristics. In males, for instance, it causes a deeper voice, facial hair. It's responsible for libido or sex drive. So those are all secondary effects, but those main effects of testosterone is that it's the trigger for spermatogenesis. Now, FSH is facilitating this. It's helping out as well. So FSH binds to the seminiferous tubules, and specifically these cells within the seminiferous tubules called sustentacular cells. You guys don't necessarily need to know that. But FSH binds to the seminiferous tubule, and it causes the seminiferous tubule to release a hormone, or actually it's not a hormone, but I'd say a binding protein, called androgen binding protein, ABP. Okay? And let's break this down. What is an androgen? An androgen is basically a male sex steroid, testosterone being the main one. So it's a binding protein that binds testosterone. So if this is a testosterone molecule right there, okay, a testosterone steroid, androgen binding protein comes along and binds to it. Okay? Well, what does that do? Well, it protects the testosterone. It protects it from being degraded. And so what it does is it keeps the concentration of testosterone within the testes. It keeps that concentration high. And that's required for spermatogenesis. So for spermatogenesis, not only do we need luteinizing hormone to cause the production of testosterone, we need follicle stimulating hormone that comes down and produces ABP, which binds to testosterone and allows levels to stay high in the area of the testes. And that's what triggers spermatogenesis. And that's pretty much it. I mean, with males, it's pretty straightforward. After puberty, constantly producing GnRH, constantly producing FSH and LH, and these two hormones act together to lead to the continual production of sperm. Now there is we do have to regulate the the amount of sperm that we're producing, and that's where this hormone called inhibin comes into play. And inhibin is produced by cells of the seminiferous tubule. And what it's responsible for is maintaining a steady level of sperm production throughout the day. So specifically, we want sperm count to be about 20 million sperm per milliliter of semen. And what happens is that when sperm count is high, when it's greater than this number, greater than 20 million sperm per milliliter semen, inhibin release goes up. And so here's inhibin. And what does it show that's happening here? It's being produced by the seminiferous tubule, and it's acting on the anterior pituitary. It's probably acting on the hypothalamus as well. And what is it causing to happen? Well, it's acting back on the anterior pituitary and decreasing the production of FSH and LH. It's having, I guess what you could say, is negative feedback. Okay? So what's going on here? Sperm count gets high, inhibin is released, causes the decrease of these two hormones, and how does that help solve our problem? Well, that means we have reduced levels of testosterone and reduced levels of ABP. And if we have decreased level of those, then we're going to have decreased sperm production. And it's going to bring that sperm level back to where it needs to be. When sperm count gets too low, inhibin is decreased, which causes elevated levels of these two, which causes increased sperm production. And this is interesting here. These are plasma testosterone levels. Actually, it's not very interesting. So when we get to the females and we look at these hormonal profiles, there's going to be a lot more going on, stuff like that that occurs over a period of 28 days. But in males, these are plasma testosterone levels. And here's fertilization. And then, let's see, we get a spike in testosterone. This is, here's birth right here. So we have a spike in testosterone in utero, and I assume that this has to do with sexual differentiation. Okay, at this point, this is going to lead to the formation of the testes and other male characteristics. So that's what that's for. Then right after birth, we have a little spike in testosterone. I'm not quite sure what that's for. But then during childhood, we have low levels of testosterone. And then when puberty hits, you can see you have this tremendous spike in testosterone. And these testosterone levels reach a critical level, and then they pretty much plateau there for most of the life of a male. And since testosterone is ultimately responsible for spermatogenesis, this means that adult males are pretty much producing sperm all throughout their lives. And another thing that I want to point out, this testosterone levels are not just important for spermatogenesis, but they're important for the development of what we call secondary sex characteristics, especially these testosterone levels that occur during puberty. So these during puberty, testosterone is responsible for the development of these, what we call these male secondary sex characteristics. These are features induced in non-reproductive organs by the male sex hormones, especially testosterone, at puberty. So we have pubic hair, axillary hair, facial hair. Enlarging of the larynx causes a deeper voice. The skin thickens, becomes oilier. Increased bone growth, boosts metabolic rate, male libido, muscle growth. All of this is due to testosterone. And I think I'll leave it there.